Hi, this video is from Michael. Michael bought a house last August in Austin, Texas. It has an intercom system in it. And since Austin, Texas is really close to Dallas, Texas, of course, it's a music and sound model because what else would you expect to find in Texas? He called me last week and was interested in seeing if he could get the system working properly again. During our conversation, it became apparent that like a lot of new homeowners, especially when they have more vintagey systems, doesn't really know very much about it. So I told him I would make him a copy of the owner's manual for it, and that will get him started. And then we need to look at how to clean the controls in the master station and in the remote stations and sort of get everything tuned up and cleaned up a little bit so then you can actually assess what is and isn't working. Now, before we get into the particulars of all of that, let's talk about music and sound and their model numbers. So apparently, in doing some brief research, music and sound like to make a new model number every time they made some small change in a model that they already were making. This makes it complicated because you may not be able to find a model number that's exactly like the one that you think you have, but your set belongs to a series of models that have different letters at the end usually, and that makes it kind of confusing. So don't get too hung up on the model number sometimes, because what is easier to deal with is, what does your set look like? Now in Michael's case, his set looks very much like this one. This is a model 20, let's turn it over and make sure. I believe it's a model 20E. The other thing that music and sound like to do is they like to put their model number stickers on the bottom right hand corner of the faceplate. You can see this one is, oh, it's upside down, but you can read it anyway. And it's partially torn off. Later on, especially starting in the 80s, they like to use clear labels with printing on it, which makes it extra hard to read. So that was great. So model numbers are difficult. This is the back of the unit. There is not a model number printed anywhere on the chassis at all. Figuring out what you have can be moderately complicated. So this particular unit was made in probably December of 1977 because on the sticker on the back it shows warranty expires December 31st, 1978. And music and sound, I believe, would put the expiration date, and I think these models had a 1-year warranty on them. Although I have read some literature that some models had 3-year warranties, so it's kind of all up for grabs. So differences between this 20E and the one that Michael says he has are subtle, but differences nevertheless. And again, it's a little hard to pin down because I don't have a complete library of owner's manuals for every model, music, and sound ever made. So you can take it all with a little bit of a grain of salt. The differences, I believe, between this unit and Michael's unit are this is a die-cast faceplate metal, and I assume it was fairly expensive to make. His has this fancy scroll work on these end panels, which this one doesn't have, and that's a very common, this is a very common type of faceplate for earlier music and sound models. So his has the fancy scrolly things on the ends, and also in this panel down here he has a digital clock with red LED numbers. There was also, I found pictures of a version of what appeared to be a similar model to this that had an old-fashioned analog clock. Analog means it has hands. Every single one of those carries some different model number, because if we're going to put an analog clock, it's going to be a different model. If we're going to put a digital clock, it's going to be another model yet again. So let's make it as complicated as possible. For all intents and purposes, his unit is very much like this unit. He has the AM/FM tuning scale here on the left-hand side. He's got the 9 room control switches at the top, plus the intercom switch here at the on the left-hand end, and then 6 control knobs. So it's very similar to this, and it's enough for the purposes of this video. So again, the purpose of this video is to show Michael how he can clean the switches and clean the controls on his master station, so then he can set things up correctly and have a better chance at figuring out what is and isn't working. If we turn this around just very briefly, you'll see that it's got a big giant metal plate in the way, and that doesn't help us making the video at all. However, if we turn it upside down, you can get a better bird's eye view of what we're going to be looking at. The technical term for this is there isn't jack all in this. This is you got a lot of faceplate and you got a lot of chassis, and you don't have that much going on in here. So what we have is, on this end, we have the AM/FM tuner board with the variable condenser, the tuning drum. This is an analog tuner, so when you turn the knob, you watch the pointer moves up and down, old school. On this side, you've got what appears to be a fairly basic power supply, an amplifier, and a little bit of circuitry that I believe makes the intercom work. I haven't really studied the schematic on this because I don't have one to fix, and I'm not going to spend the time until I need to. Then there's a third board, and the third board is down in here where it's a little hard to see, right in here, and that board, that's the built-in chime module. And this particular unit seems to have possibly, it's either a 3 or an 8-note chime. It doesn't really say because you can't really tell because there's no sticker to let you know. And I assume that if you knew how to decipher the Model 20E model number on the sticker down here, you would automatically know how many chimes are in the chime module, but we don't know that. I will point out, giving Music and Sound their credit, that to have a system of any kind, of any model number, that was made in the late 1970s that had an electronic chime module, good on them, because that was a much more advanced thing to include in an intercom system than what any other company had that I can think of. So let's get back to the heart of the matter. We need to clean controls. We have 10 switches here at the top, and we have what looks like 6 controls down here. Although this one is your tuning control. This is a tuning shaft with a dial cord attached to it that you turn back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. That doesn't need to be cleaned because it's just a mechanical part. So there's 5 controls here and 10 switches. We'll do the switches first because that's the easiest to begin with. These are pretty much 3-position slide switches. Nothing really fancy. These don't feel horrible. This one, which is the intercom switch, which is push to talk and release to listen for the reply. This is a spring-loaded slide switch. You can see as I let it go, it pops back to the center, but they all need to be cleaned. They don't feel super bad, but cleaning will help. What happens to switches like this are they get left in a certain position, usually all in the on position, and that exposes the mechanical contacts inside the switch for decades and decades and decades, and the metal in the contacts oxidizes, and when you move it one day, all of a sudden the sound goes away and you can't get it to come back because you've disturbed it after 40 years. So we need to clean them a little bit. So what are we going to use? We're going to use our Deoxit D5, the tried and true, you can count on it cleaner that I recommend in all of these types of videos. I don't want to hear a lot of comments about I have this kind of cleaner and I have this other kind of cleaner and I got some stuff on the shelf in my garage that I've had since 1972, and even though the label fell off of it and I'm pretty sure it's switch cleaner and not carburetor cleaner, which it probably is, I don't want to hear all that. This is what we recommend. I'm not going to change. I'm not actually interested in any other kind. This is what we use. You can buy this on Amazon and it's easy to find. It's good. It's all, just buy it. It's easier that way. You're going to need the little red straw because that will help you pinpoint where the spray is going to go. As I talk about in a lot of the videos, cleaning controls is a less is more project. When I say spray a little bit, that doesn't mean empty half the can into the switch and it all runs out on the floor and makes a big mess and your wife gets mad because you got it all over the wall. A little bit means as little as you possibly can. If it's not quite enough after you move the switch around, guess what? You can always add a little more. So let's go for, we're trying to get between 4 and 5 drops of cleaner into each switch to begin with, because really that will be enough. Here in this close-up view, you can see the back side of the 10 switches. That's these little sort of tan colored rectangular portions. That each one is the back of a switch. All the switches are in the down position, which would be the on position, which opens up a little gap at the top of each one, which is where we're going to spray the cleaner. The spring-loaded one here is a little different. It has a white backing on it. But regardless, it's still basically the same idea. The other thing you want to do when you do this is you need a rag. This is a white shop rag. See? White. Okay. We're going to put that over the front of the switches. So if we get any spray blowing around, it's not going to run out the front of the unit and make a big mess. And all we're going to do is spray a little bit into each switch. And if you were really paying attention, you will notice now that the tan colored backing plate on each switch is now more of a chestnut brown because it's gotten wet from the cleaner, and that's fine. It'll evaporate away and it'll be okay. Once we've done that, then all you have to do, we're going to flip it around, make sure you can see it, is you're going to operate the switches up and down many times. The spring-loaded one is easy because you only have to push it down. These you have to go up and down, up and down, up and down, and then again, and again, and again, and you work through all of them. Now, what I tell people all to do all the time is, hey, that one's still up, is you want to do this with the radio on and playing. Because that way, as you turn each room on and off, you may be able to hear if it's improved or not. That's a good start. That's as long as that really takes to do. Of course, if you get any overspray on the little plastic stems of the switch, you want to wipe them off. Also, it's a good chance to get rid of the dust and crud that builds up on them over the years. And that's pretty much it. Now, you might find that when you get the whole house done, and you set everything up and you make all your adjustments, that maybe as you go through and you move each one of these, maybe there's one that when you push it to on, maybe it goes crackle crackle in that room and it doesn't really want to play and you got to wiggle it around. That one you maybe need to clean again. Just little spray, remember, little bit, and it'll be great. Now that we've cleaned our slide switches, we need to focus on our 5 controls here. So you have speaker volume, which is the speaker here. You have intercom volume, you have radio on, off, and volume, you have bass and treble adjustment, and you have your input selector, which is phono, FM, AFC, door, and AM. So these controls, turn, these are volume control type like pot assemblies. And this one is a multi-position switch. You can hear it go click, 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 click as you turn it. Now the best way to do this, and this will make it a little more difficult for some of you, is you can't get to it from the top. There's this terminal block thing in the way and you can't really get to the controls. So to do this, you got to do it upside down. And what we're looking at is this area down in here where my hand is, which is a big giant wide open area, because remember, if you look at the back of this set, there's jack all in it. There's nothing, you got all this. If you didn't have the chime module here, if you didn't have this board and this metal plate, all you'd have is a tuner board here and a power supply amplifier board here, and the rest of it's empty. So you got tons of room, which is kind of nice. So what we need to do is I'm going to prop this up so you can see it. How you do this in your house, this is reasonably heavy. This probably weighs 6-7 pounds. You might have to get someone to help you to hold it while you turn it upside down or kneel on the floor and spray up and don't get it in your eyes or something like that. But you have to work that out if you're doing this. So let me see if I can get this set up, and I'll show you what to do. Since the controls inside the master station are really hard to see, and I'm not going to take the whole thing apart so you can see it better, we're going to use this as an example. This is the back of a music and sound remote station that's approximately from the same era as the master station. And right here, this little round control right here, this is the volume control. This is very similar to what's inside the master station that we're going to clean. This is a little smaller in size, but the basic idea is the same. These types of controls are used on all sorts of different things, and this needs to be cleaned. Inside of this is called a wire wound potentiometer, which means inside of it there's a round donut of carbon, think about like pencil lead, and wrapped around it a zillion times is a really super fine wire about the size of a human hair. And then the knob is connected to a wiper. So you have a donut of carbon and you have a wiper that sits in one spot touching the wire wound around the carbon, and as you turn the knob, the wiper moves back and forth around the donut, changing the volume. Because the contact sits in one spot for decades, that spot stays relatively clear. On either side of it, the wire that's wound around the donut becomes oxidized. It gets a coating on it that prevents it from making a good connection. And then one day the grandkids come over, turn the knob, moving it from the clean spot to the dirty spot, and all of a sudden the sound goes crackle, crackle, and goes away. That's because it needs to be cleaned, and that's what we're going to do. These types of controls, usually on one spot right here where the screwdriver is pointing, there's a little slot, a little opening. This one happens to be where the connections that the wires are soldered onto, yellow, blue, and red, are located, and that's usually the way they're made. And that little slot that's in the control is where we need to spray our cleaner. And all you have to do, again, it's a little bit. We're going for 4 to 5 drops. We're not going to flood it so it runs out and you waste it all. All you do is you take your little red straw and you very carefully line it up with the slot, and you spray it. That's much. How long did I spray that? What was that, half a second? That's all you need. Once you spray it in the cleaner into the control, then you're going to reach around and you're going to turn the control back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and that will distribute the cleaner. It'll help clean up the wire that's wound around the donut, and all of a sudden all the crackly and staticky noise that you get when you turn the volume control will disappear. That's all there is to it. Now that I've showed you on this one, now we're going to look at this one down here. This is a little tricky. So there are 5 controls that need to be cleaned. There's one right here. That's like the one I just showed you with a slot. There's another one down here, which is the same idea. One here in the center. One down here, where it's really hard to see. Follow the red handle of the screwdriver right down there. And then this is our input selector switch. That's a completely different type of switch, which we'll talk about in a minute. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through and clean the 4 controls that are like the ones in the remote speaker that I just showed you. And what you have to do is you have to look at each one carefully and find where the slot or the opening in the control is located. We're going to do this one first right here because that one's easy to see. We're going to push this white and orange wire out of the way a little bit. I can clearly see the slot, the opening, and I'm going to put the red straw and spray a little bit like that. And I'm going to turn the knob back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Now, when I do this myself, and I've done this 1 million times in people's houses, what I normally do is I'll turn the control all the way to the right, so it's as far as it can go, and then I will spray a little bit, and then I will turn it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, stopping all the way to the left, and then perhaps give it another little shot. This is the benefit of spraying only a little bit, because you can spray a little bit 3 times, and it's not going to flood all over the lady's wall, and she's not going to get mad at you. I've sprayed that like I've showed you. You actually saw me do it, and I'm turning the knob right now, and I can tell you for certain the knob is way smoother and way easier to turn than it was before. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do the next one, which is going to be a little trickier because this would be the next one I want to do, and the slot is actually on the top. So I've got to move this around, and I'm going to let you watch me move it around, because in this case gravity is your friend, and it's a little tricky, and you're not going to be able to see it very well, but I have it tipped up on its edge, and I sprayed a little bit, and now I'm turning the knob. Listen. And that's good. So we're just going to do it because this is an example. We're not going to go crazy on it. And then now we're going to do this one, which again, hard to show you. This one right here. Or maybe, how about this? This one right here. So I've got it tilted upside down on its corner. Spray a little bit. That's the on-off radio volume control. I'm turning the knob. That's good. We did that one. And we did the center one. So the last one we have to do is this one, the speaker one for the master station. That's an important one. And actually, that one's actually sitting upright. So now the set is right side up again. And actually, it's a little hard to see or impossible. If I move a couple of these little wires out of the way, I can actually see the slot from the top. Spray a little bit in there, work it back and forth, and they're done. That's as much time as it takes. It'll take you a little longer, but it's not that difficult to do. Now the last one we have to do is the input selector switch, which is this one right here. That's the one that allows you to switch from phono, FM, door, and AM. And if you listen, you can hear it go click, 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 because it's a multi-position switch. So let me see if I can get this set up, and I'll show you how to do that. We're looking at our multi-position input selector switch here, the one that goes click, 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 click as you turn it. And what you can see here is there's all of these points around the perimeter of it where wires are soldered on. And then if we turn the knob, and I'm going to try to do this without disturbing it too much, watch this center portion right here. You can see it turn. And that's what happens when you turn the knob. You're turning the center part of the switch, this part right in here, and it has little tabs and connections on it, and as you rotate it, it makes different connections between the points with the wires. Now, when this switch was brand new, when this set was made in, say, 1977, this center portion with this ring with all the tabs and contacts on it, this was shiny like a nickel. And what's happened to it now that it's all black, is that the coating, the shiny like a nickel part, has oxidized. It's turned black from being exposed to air for decades and decades and decades, because realistically this set is all 45 years old. The benefit here is that these are super high quality switches when they were new, and they're still super high quality switches today. But they need to be cleaned because the oxidation prevents it from making good contacts on the little contact points around the perimeter. So you can take your Deoxit D5, spray a little bit on it, not a lot, just a little, and then rotate it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And for most people, that will be good enough. You might have to do that a couple times, but for the most part, for most people, it will be fine. Now, if it's really, really, really bad, and you have, let's say when you switch it from AM to FM. You gotta like jiggle it, the knob, to try to make a connection, and sometimes it comes in and sometimes it goes out, and it's not very good. Try cleaning it again. If that still doesn't do it, there is a much more extreme way to clean it, but that's for a topic for a different video. I do have a video that shows how to clean a switch that's similar to this, and I will put one of those pop-up things right up here somewhere that will take you to that. It's not on a music and sound system, but at the end of the day, switches are switches. So that's it. That's the basic steps of what you need to do to clean the switches and controls on a late 70s music and sound AM FM intercom master station. Like I said in the beginning, don't get hung up on the model. If your controls are similar to this, which a lot of these models are, the steps still apply. If you have a model that's maybe it's not a 20E, maybe it's a 20, I assume there's 20As, Bs, Cs, and Ds, you can always let me know which one you have in the comments down below, and I'll add it to the list of what this video applies towards, and that will help other people. I hope you found this interesting, and maybe for someone, including Michael, it will be helpful. If it is, give it a thumbs up on YouTube, because that helps us a bunch. There'll be a banner right here that shows you how to subscribe. Go to our YouTube homepage, click on the bell, and when you click on the bell, click on it to receive all notifications, and every time we post a new video, you'll get a notification and you can watch it. That's all for today. See you on the next video.